Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to tint your taillights. What you need is your taillights removed. In some makes and models you can do this with it on the vehicle still, but you want to tape and newspaper everything off that you don't want to get sprayed on. You're going to need a bowl of water. You're going to need some 800 grit as well as some 2000 grit wet or dry sandpaper, some rubbing compound. I have Meguiar's, it doesn't really matter. You're going to need some plastic restorer, which will be one of the most essential things to this. You're going to need some lens tint and some automotive enamel. I got these both at Walmart. You don't really have to go pricey on these kinds of things. You're going to need some masking tape as well as just your nitty-gritty normal rag. First thing you're going to want to do is take 2 sheets of your sandpaper, both of them, and just throw it in the bowl of water. You want that to soak. Secondly, you're just going to want to get a little bit of water on your rag and just kind of clean up your headlights. Make sure there's no dirt on there so you know what you're working with. You don't have to be very thorough with this, but you just want to make sure that they're clean, not dirty, because you're going to be spraying on these. Alright guys, next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take some of your 800 after it's been soaking for a couple minutes and just scratch it up. Just get every surface area that you can and make sure you're pretty thorough with it. And then after this you want to move on to your 2000 grit. I'm obviously not going to show you guys that. It's just a waste of time. I'm sure you guys can handle it. Once you're done sanding, it should look kind of gritty. What you want to do next is you want to get your rag again and just get it kind of just a little bit wet. You don't want to soak it because you need to dry off with this rag too. And just clean it off, because now we get to the fun stuff. After all of that, it kind of looks a little bit scratchy, as you can tell. But you know, that's exactly what you want. That's what the paint's gonna stick to. This next step isn't exactly essential, but if you can tell, I could probably see pretty well out of my reverse lights, and I still want to be able to see very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my masking tape and cover up my reverse light lens, because if you don't, it's kind of hard to see when you're backing up, and that's not something I want. Like I said, it's not essential. You don't have to do it because some people want that pure black look, which I can understand, but I'm going to be doing that. If you did it right, it should look like that. You shouldn't see anything in your reverse lights, and it should be ready to go. You're ready for tint. Alright guys, here's the tricky part. What you want to do is, with your first layer, you want to go really light. You want to make sure your can's all shook up and ready, and you just barely want to put anything on there. Just barely anything. Because if you put too much on, you'll smudge it, and that's a coat. That's barely anything, but that does the job, because if you want to go thick, you'll get a lot of drips, and you don't want that. You just kind of get it back a little bit. Don't overdo it. That's it. That's your first coat. You can't really see much of a difference. You can see a slight tinge to it. Now you want to wait about 15 minutes for you. This is after about 4 kind of light coats. You want to wait about 15 minutes each. It looks real dark, real nice. You want to get them in the right light to compare them. Make sure they're the same tinge, or tint, sorry. This one, obviously, as you can tell, it's a little bit lighter in the turn signal area compared to this one. That's what we want to find out, is figure out what's lighter than the other. And you want to make them the exact same. So it is, you want to take your automotive enamel, your clear coat. You don't exactly have to get this brand. You can get any basically UV resistant clear coat. And you want to spray these a little bit heavier than you did with the tint, because it's kind of rough after the tint, that it'll stick a little better, it won't drip as much. You just want to get a good nice coat on there on each of them. Don't really have to worry about drips as much. I put about at least 3 coats, a little bit thicker coats on there. It'll seal it up, you know, make sure that there's no fading going on. And it's one of the more essential parts of this. If you want it to last, you'll want it. Right, after you finished up your clear coat, I did, I think, 3 decent sized coats on it. It's really rough. You're gonna want to take your 800 grit and 2000 grit and really sand the heck out of it. I'm gonna take off this stuff covering up my reverse lights, and I'm just gonna sand all of that as well, because this is the point where you're restoring them back to their factory kind of finish, and then you'll be on the last step. One, after it's been sanded down with 800 then 2000 in comparison to the other that hasn't yet. This one's got a ton of little scratches and it looks like it's got a slight oxidization on the outside, but I just want to show you in comparison to this one. Is so much smoother in comparison to this one, which is really rough. It feels like some 200 grit sandpaper, and it's got little globs everywhere, it looks like. And this is one of the things you want to make sure you do thoroughly to get rid of any uneven paint, or just if you had something you missed. And you want to mount it back in your car, because anything you do from this point on won't damage your car. You're going to want to take your rubbing compound. I'm serious, use this a lot. You're going to want to use a lot of this because you're going to need to buff it all in. It's not going to hurt if you have some excess. If anything, you just work on your car a little bit. You want to take your rag. You want to start buffing this stuff in. You want to buff it in really hard so you can get a nice little finish going. Don't worry about getting it on your car. It'll all come off. It's not going to damage your paint. And you got to do that to both of them. This one's already done. You can see it's got a nice finish going on it. It's nice and smooth. Sure, I've got a little bit of that rubbing compound left over, but that's not going to hurt anything. Then we're going to move on to the next one. Take your plastic restorer and do the exact same thing with rubbing compound. Use a lot. Don't worry about getting it on your car. You'll use it all. And you want to do the exact same thing you were doing with your rubbing compound. You want to do this on both of them. Really buff it in there. Alright guys, and now that's it. You're done. You got a nice dark shade. They both look good. You can still see out your reverse lights if you chose to do that. And it matches up with your vehicle. Nice. Good job guys on doing something on your